What's up, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of the Chalk Talk Podcast. I am your host, Ken Doolittle, joined as always by my friend and resident Packers fan, Mike Burke. We also have a special guest in the house today that we're going to get to in a minute. But a lot going on this week. We're back. We're 2 weeks in a row here after a little hiatus, so we have a lot to recap on the last week in the NFL. Kind of bye-week purgatory this week for fantasy owners, and also makes the lines a little tougher. And we finally had some NBA action. So last night was the opening night of NBA. So we got a lot to talk about there, some interesting outcomes. Burke, as always, will give you a little update on his college football specials. And hey, we have a pretty decently bad, I guess you could say, Thursday night game this week. That's probably going to work out to be okay. And somehow, Burke, the Red Sox are barely alive, but as we speak, they are sort of flatlining.
Yeah, well, barely alive is better than dead like the New York Yankees, that's for sure. But
there we go.
Right now, it's not looking great. The bats kind of just fell asleep after that unbelievable stretch from the Rays into the first couple games against the Stros. But you know what? There's still time. They still got outs to play with, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, they probably got to win this one, right? We don't think they can win 2 in a row in Houston. This is kind of a must-win in my book.
I mean, if you got Eddie and you got Eovaldi, who are going to be starting Game 6 and potentially a Game 7. So you got a chance. If the bats wake up like they were the first 3 games of the series, they have a shot.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, nothing's out of the question. It becomes a lot easier if they win tonight, obviously. Kind of got hosed last night. Don't want to make excuses for them or anybody else, but
not going to talk about it, but the bats went silent for 8 innings last night. It wasn't.
Well, that's it too. That's it too. You got to hit to win the game, and they're not going to win scoring 3 runs or whatever the hell they scored. So enough about that. Hopefully, we're still talking about the Red Sox next week on this pod. And man, that'd be awesome if they went to another World Series. We're playing with house money right now, but it is just so hard to not get amped when you're like 6 wins away from winning another World Series. They weren't supposed to make it this far, but now that they have, it's like, they have to get there for me. You know what I mean? You probably feel the same way, but
I agree. At this point, why not win the whole thing? Don't come up short. And even though we've already previously stated they're a year ahead of schedule, but now that they're here, you're kind of disappointed because you felt like the Astros series, the way it was started, the first 2.5 games, it was theirs for the taking. But right now, it's not looking great, and they're going to have to pull the troops together and find a way to come back in this one.
Yeah, well, it's 2-2. It feels like it should be 2-2. We'll see what happens. And we saw what happened on Sunday in the NFL. All the squares won. Every favorite on the 1 p.m. slate won outright and covered their game. The Dolphins obviously lost because Burke cursed them in the morning game as a favorite. But other than that, most of the favorites covered this week. It was insane. Teaser legs hit. Moneyline parlays hit. All the squares were winning. I guarantee you had at least one friend post a screenshot online of some FanDuel bet where they placed $25 and won $400 on 8 favorites or something. And these weeks happen. I like to call them mousetrap weeks because when you are, you put a mousetrap out, what happens? The mouse thinks it's food. They go get it. Maybe they get away once. The next time they come back, though, that trap is snapping them. That's what's going to happen to us. Don't be the mouse. Do not go back to the trap and think that all these favorites are going to cover this week, because they're not. That's not how Vegas operates. And we have seen the lines adjust, which we're also going to get to. The biggest win for me on the day was the 2.5-point favorite Ravens winning by a lot more than 2.5 over the Chargers. That was a bit of a beatdown.
That was a great call on your part, and I didn't see it coming. I thought the Chargers were going to make it a much more competitive game, but Lamar Jackson has had an unbelievable start to this season, and we're going to get to him a little bit later in this episode. But even without their starting running backs and a couple other key injuries for the Ravens, they are producing, and they look like a legitimate threat that could win the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, I had them to win their division before the season. I think they were plus 120 or something. They might have even been more. I know the Browns were favored. Speaking of the Browns, man, what a funeral for them the past couple weeks. They've dropped 2 straight. Baker just doesn't seem to have it. Both their running backs are out. Even last week, trailing by 1 million, Baker only threw the ball 28 times. So I know he's out tomorrow. We're recording this on Wednesday, so they just dropped the news that he's out. But if they're only throwing 28 times when they're losing by that much to the Cardinals, I don't think they trust Baker. I don't think that team can do it. I went to the well for the first time last week and bet on the Brownies, and I regret every second of it. The other side of that game, the Cardinals, something that we need to watch out for is the Cardinals as underdogs. They have performed very well, catching 3 to 6 points all season, and they have not performed well when favored, specifically against the Vikings in that game. They probably should have lost, but against the Rams, against the Browns last week, and I forget who else they played where they were underdogs too, but they have covered and won outright in a lot of these underdog games. So something we need to take a look at maybe moving forward.
And again, Kyler Murray is allowing that team to perform at an unbelievable level. He has been a key component, and the way he's playing, he's playing like an MVP too. He wants a piece of the pie, and he's really proven himself in his first couple of years in the league, taking big strides.
Yeah, for sure. So we bet on that over. That was one of Burke's locks, actually the first lock of the season that hit. Congratulations to you, Burke. It hit 51, I believe, the total, and you had over 49. Good call on the key number there. Way to get on the board.
Did not sweat it for a minute.
Didn't sweat it for a minute. There was about 31 points in the first half, and I said if you lose that one, then everybody should definitely be fading you the next week.
Yeah, I thought you were going to put the hex on me for that, but thank God.
I know. I shouldn't have sent the text. That was my bad. I bet on the Browns. That was one of my favorite picks of the week at -3. Somebody else who bet on the Browns is here joining us today, and we have lost in solidarity. One of our fellow fantasy league members, Josh Smertz, in the house with us today to talk a little investing, a little gambling, basically the same thing. Josh, what's going on?
Thanks for having me on, guys. Very happy to be here.
Welcome. Glad to have you. And you're bringing the style. You dressed up for the occasion.
It's not too late to remind people that it's winter or summer's not a season. It's all about what's in here.
Is it still summer up there in Canada? Do they even have summer? Do they even have
certainly
daylight?
Is not.
I thought it started
pretend,
2 months ago up there.
Well, that's all the more reason to have this on.
That's right. So Smertz is here today to talk with us about gambling and investing, like I said. The start of our discussion today, though, is something that we talk about every week. Who's the MVP of the NFL? It's way too early to be talking about this, but we've said that, we want to monitor the lines at least. And, if you look at what we said last week where, we were talking about don't take the favorite, don't take Kyler Murray at 4-1, don't take Josh Allen at 4-1. If you believe in Patrick Mahomes, I think he was 25-1 last week or something insane like that, Burke. I don't remember offhand. Maybe I'm wrong. But we want to take value on these plays. So if you look at the odds right now, Kyler is still 4-1. Josh Allen is plus 420. Dak is the favorite again at 4-1. So Dak at 4-1 was good value last week. Maybe not so much now. Brady's still plus 850, Rodgers 1,200, and Mahomes is now 1,500. I think he was 1,500 last week.
Yeah, I think that sounds correct. I don't think he moved too much after his game against Washington.
So let's go through, MVP odds. Smertz, any of those odds stand out to you? Dak, Kyler 4-1, Josh Allen plus 420, Brady 9-1, Rodgers, Stafford 12-1. Anybody of interest?
I was actually thinking Matty Ice Stafford.
Matt Stafford, 12-1. Not a bad call. What's the logic?
Well, really, the Rams are contenders this year, and I think everyone loves a good storyline. And we all remember what happened when fellow veteran Tom Brady last year moved from the Pats to the Bucks, won the Super Bowl, won the MVP. Matty Ice is coming from the lowly Lions, coming into true Super Bowl contenders. And I think if he can bring that team to winning a Super Bowl again, I think we'll see those odds start to move into valuable territory.
I like the play. There's two flaws with your logic, though. They give out the MVP before the Super Bowl, or they base it on the regular season, so we wouldn't get to see those odds. And Brady won Super Bowl MVP last year.
Not league MVP. That was my boy,
MVP.
Aaron Rodgers.
That was Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately. But I like the call. I like Stafford. We all have a significant hand invested in the Rams to go all the way and win the game. So obviously we think that Stafford is a competent quarterback. Burke, you're going elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm right now looking at two guys that are you're going to get good odds for them right now. My first being Lamar Jackson. I think you're getting him right
13-1.
13-1. And the way he's been running that Ravens offense with those many injuries, they're 5-1 off to a hot start. They've already beat Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Put a flex on the Chargers, who are a playoff contender for sure out of the AFC West. And the way they've been doing it, they've been dominating the game. He's been very efficient inside the pocket. I think he's one of the top guys passing out of the pocket with touchdowns this year. He continues to do that, and he's always going to be dangerous with his feet. So he's going to rack up rushing yards on the way. So he's been a one-man wrecking crew, and as long as Baltimore's going to continue winning, even though the division is kind of difficult right now, he's going to have a shot. And you may not get much better than 13-1 right now, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. My second option, and it's a little off the beaten path a little bit, Derrick Henry of the Titans. Now, I think the last MVP that was a non-quarterback was Adrian Peterson. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But going against the Buffalo Bills this past Monday night in prime time, who I think is the best complete team in the AFC and should represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, and the Buffalo Bills, Derrick Henry ran right through them for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it was his third game of the year with 3+ touchdowns, I believe. So he's off to a really hot start there. And this week, I believe he's got the Kansas City Chiefs. And if he does anything remotely close to what he did against Buffalo, against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and he's going off at 28-1, I think, right now.
28-1.
He could skyrocket those odds up, and you can get him at real good value. And there's a legitimate chance if the Titans continue to win games, he's going to be right in the conversation at the end of things too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Good pull on the Adrian Peterson there. I did fact check. You are correct. 2012, Adrian Peterson, the last running back or non-quarterback even to win the MVP. 28-1, I don't hate it. I mean, if you believe in Henry, he's obviously the best running back in the league, probably the best individual skill player at his position in the league. The only argument against that is the team's just not very good. They're going to lose a lot of games. I know they just beat the Bills. I don't care necessarily. I just don't think they're going to have enough wins for him to be in contention. Usually, that Vikings team was really good with Adrian Peterson. They're going to have to win the division, which they could. Who knows? Maybe they get 10, 11 wins. He's in the conversation. But I'm going to stick with your Lamar pick. I love him at 13-1. I think that's incredible value. Nobody has done more with less. If you want to talk about the true definition of MVP, most valuable to the team, that team sucks. They lost all their skill players. They lost like 3 running backs before the season even started. Their wideouts, they were down 2 wideouts. Lamar just keeps the train rolling. They're winning games. He's winning games by himself. He's got some highlight plays, always going to have some highlight runs. Something I find important in basketball when we're talking about MVPs is who are you going to see on TV, who are you going to see on SportsCenter. That's who's going to get the MVP buzz. Lamar is always going to be on SportsCenter for these runs that he has. He's making some throws this year. 4 touchdowns, I believe, in the last game against the Colts, all through the air, which kind of screwed me on a bet. But 4 through the air is impressive when you have a running quarterback like that. And they're winning games. Before the season, their win total was 11.5. I just checked now, and I love that FanDuel does these adjusted regular season wins throughout the season. You can bet them pretty late. The Baltimore Ravens win total right now. Anybody want to take a guess what it is?
What are they, 5-1 right now?
5-1.
I'm gonna say 12.5. That probably went up again.
I couldn't even come up with a number.
12.5. Go with Burke. 12.5 is the total, so it went up a game, and the over is actually juiced plus 115. I like it. Why aren't they going to win 13 games? They've already had a very tough schedule. They beat the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs are struggling, but they've already had a good win. Lamar gets to 13-4, 14-3. He's winning this thing. So take him at 13-1. Remember, 13-1 is just about the same odds that we came on this podcast and pitched Josh Allen at before the season. He's now 4-1. You can get a couple of these guys at 13, 15-1 throughout the season. If you get 3 of them at those odds, you're going to hit one of them most likely at 4-1 or something like that. That's why I like doing these bets. So the team that the Ravens beat up on last week was the Chargers, who had another MVP candidate, at least in Justin Herbert, or potential future MVP. But they lead to a very good discussion that I want to have about analytics and how it affects the betting market in general. We see a lot of teams going for it on 4th down. We see a lot of teams neglecting to kick field goals. We see a lot of teams missing extra points in field goals. And we talked about that last week. And Burke, it's like we're writing prophecy here, because exactly what we talked about came true. The Chargers, without a kicker, went for it on 4th down in their own territory twice. This week they happened to miss it, and the Ravens blew them out. It's exactly how we went about it. And it's happening right before our eyes. So we're seeing a change in the betting markets, and you can see it in some of these lines this week. The problem for me becomes, and I love analytics, I think people should be going for it on fourth down. I think they should be going for 2 every time. The problem is you need good players to do that, because the analytics don't factor in, my quarterback sucks, maybe I don't go for it on 4th and 4. But in a case of the Monday night game, my quarterback doesn't suck. I have Josh Allen. I'm on the 5-yard line. It's 4th and 1. I get a first down. I'm probably going to win the game with a touchdown. I love that move. Either of you stay up for that game? What'd you think?
I agree. I mean, you have a prolific MVP candidate that is behind center. You want to give him the ball and give him a chance to get that yard. Unfortunately, didn't work out for them, whether it was he got tripped up or slipped or whatever it was. But I think it was the right call in the situation. You go for broke, and you go to play to win the game. You don't try to go to overtime, because you lose a coin toss in overtime. Especially with Derrick Henry, he could just run right down your throat and take that down and score. You don't even touch the ball in overtime. So where they were, and with Josh Allen at the helm, I thought it was the right call. Just poor execution. That's all.
Yeah, and I agree. I disagree with the play call, but I love the call to actually go for it. And this is going to lead well into our investing discussion. But you're making a decision tree at that point. It's 4th and 1. Your decision is one of 2 things. One, I go for it, and maybe I win the game or maybe I lose the game, but at least it's in my control whether or not I win or lose the game. 2, your second decision tree becomes I kick, and then it's do I make it or do I miss it? And there's a good chance you miss it. And then it becomes, okay, I make the kick. Can I win the coin toss or do I lose the coin toss, which is totally out of your control. And if you lose the coin toss, you lose the game probably without even touching the ball, because Derrick Henry already ran for a 76-yard touchdown in that game. Thank you very much. We had the over 95.5, and that hit before halftime. But you're taking this decision and making it a 4-pronged tree. 2 of those decisions are totally out of your control. I love them going for it. I just don't like the play execution. Smirts, you're a Josh Allen and Buffalo Bills believer too. What do you think about the call?
I love the call. I think they were in a position to win the game. They had a player they can trust in Josh Allen. I agree, maybe it wasn't the best play call, but given the circumstances, it completely depends on the player you have in that position. I agree with them trusting Allen. I think the coach will be sleeping well at night. Allen, on the other hand, might be replaying that moment in his head for quite a few weeks, but I think he'll get over it, and everyone will move on, and the Bills will continue to roll.
Yeah, well, he's going to think about it, right? But I enjoy the call. Strangely enough, the refs got 2 spots in a row. Absolutely correct. I don't think Josh Allen got the first down when he was doing those acrobatic somersaults the play before that. He definitely slipped up before the line on that 4th down. So basically, I love the call. You think back to the Chiefs last year against the Browns in the playoffs. When they go for it, Mahomes gets hurt and they throw that little 4th and 2 or whatever pass it was to Tyreek Hill. That's a risk-reward play, because you're going to the Super Bowl or you're not potentially, right? And I love that call, putting it in your best player's hands. And Josh Allen's our best player. I don't mind them sneaking it. I love that call. But hey, speaking of the Chiefs, they're a big believer in analytics as well. Andy Reid is a gambler of sorts himself. Their offense has been prolific this season. I know their record doesn't show it. I know their defense is terrible. To use the word we used last week that Burt got a kick of, their defense is ass-tastic, my friends. But their offense is performing at historic levels. So just some numbers for you guys. They're scoring 31 points per game, which is currently top 5 in the league. They're scoring touchdowns on 40% of their drives. 40% of their drives not only end in points, but they end in touchdowns. They're going for it on 4th downs. They're neglecting to kick, and they have a pretty good kicker as well. I think Burt drafted him in the 2nd round of our fantasy draft this year.
Yes, I did.
They're scoring touchdowns, which is huge. When teams score 3 instead of 7, their lines are actually going down. So you saw that in the Chiefs-Bills game, most notably. The Chiefs were favored by 3 before the game. They kicked a field goal on the opening drive, and they were suddenly favored by 2.5. So you have to be scoring touchdowns in these cases. The only problem with them is the turnovers. They're losing multiple balls per game to the other team. And we saw it against Washington. They just happened to pitch a shutout in the second half. We were all heavily invested on the Chiefs in that case. We definitely deserved to win that game, and we did, and it felt good to hit them on a tease and also hit them on the spread. But the total this week against the Titans is 57.5 in Tennessee. That's absurd. That's the highest total I've seen this year. I know Rams Bucks got up to 56.5. 57.5 is absurd. Smirts, where are we leaning on that?
That's a little too rich for my blood. I'm going to have to lean on the under. I mean, I know they're both strong offenses, but I can see them battling in the trenches. 57 is way too high for me.
What about you, Bert? Can I get you to take the over? 57.5.
I'm actually considering it because I'm not impressed with Tennessee's defense or Kansas City's defense. I think Tennessee's best play would be to try and just grind it out with Derrick Henry. He's going to get a lot of touches, a lot of yards. They're going to slow the game down just to keep it down. But Bills-Titans, that went well over 57 points this week, and I think the Bills had a better defense than Kansas City. I may take the over here. I think they could easily get both teams go into the 30s again, especially in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly could. The rub the other way is that, yeah, the Titans do move the ball with Derrick Henry, who's a ground and pounder, and maybe they run the clock. Maybe it's a little closer because, honestly, I know the Titans won that game, but it was really just kind of back and forth. If the Titans establish a lead, I think this game goes under. And if you take away that 76-yard Henry touchdown, that other game might go under. Now, it went over the total of 53 or whatever that game total was, but I think it goes under 57.5. I'm not touching either side of that total. I think it's smartest to stay away when you see a total like that. I can't trust it, especially when one team relies on their running back so much as Derrick Henry. And I don't think Tannehill is equipped. And Julio might be out too, not that it makes a big deal in general. But, take away one of his weapons, maybe that game goes under. So I'm going to stay away. Burke's on the over, Smertz is on the under. Tentatively, I think on both sides, not making any real picks. But, hey, you got to take some risk to make some money, right? So speaking of risk in return, we brought Smertz on here today because he is our resident investing guru. I don't know what he does for a living, but I think it's some sort of Ponzi scheme with investing. That's why he moved to Canada, I believe, to evade some tax laws or something like that. But he's on here today to talk about risk and return because me and him have some pretty interesting philosophies, and we differ on a lot of arguments, and we probably coincide in a lot of arguments. But in general, investing is a lot like gambling in a way. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, Smertz, and how you think the two are the same or how the two are different?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because when you think about it, they seem like they're different, right? I mean, investing, you get the image of, your traditional investors, your Warren Buffett, your Wall Street. Gambling, I mean, you picture sports, right? I mean, you picture really throwing your money out there on limited information and your gut feel, and you're hoping for the best. And I think that's the image that a lot of people have. But really, at the end of the day, I mean, why could you not say that gambling is an investing? I mean, you take, for example, I know Bet We Like preseason, the Rams to win the Super Bowl. That event is in 6 months or 6 months in the future, or whenever you get that line. And you have a stake in that bet. And if you really wanted to, you can sell that line at any point in the season and you can make a profit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, how is that not investing? And
sure. And you think of the richest of the rich, right? Like Warren Buffett, like you said, when you think of investing, you think of people like that. You think of, parents teaching their kids, oh, you want to invest, you want to make some money. There's a lot of richer sports bettors in the world than you would imagine, right? There's people making millions upon millions of dollars doing this for a living. So it's not as degenerate as people might once have thought about it. Now, the way you and I and Burke do it, maybe it is a little more degenerate, but in general, people are making millions and millions of dollars doing this. And if you do it right, and if, not that we're geniuses, but I would say we know a little bit more than squares, it's definitely a risk, but in order to get a return, you kind of have to take a risk, right? So when I do that, I like to think of best case, worst case scenario. I'm interested to see your comments on this. So let's use a blackjack table, for instance, something that we all three of us know, unfortunately, way too well. You go to a blackjack table with $500. Worst case, you're walking out of there with zero, right? You theoretically lose it all. Usually best case, what happens? You double your money, absolute best case. So you're walking out of there with somewhere between $0 and $1,000. Investing is the same thing. It's just a little bit less risky, a little bit less return, right? If you invest $500 in, Apple or whatever company you want to say, worst case, what happens? Oh, it tanks, the company goes under, they cut in half, you have $250, right? Best case, over 5-10 years, you've doubled your money. So there's a little less risk because you can lose some of it. But it's basically the same concept. You're gambling on will that company or not be successful. So what do you, and I want to relate this back to sports betting, and Bert can chime in on this too, but Smertz, what do you look for when you make an investment? Let's say you have $1,000 and you want to throw it into the stock market. What do you look for?
Well, the first thing is I look for value. I mean, you have to consider, with the limited information that you have, and using a little bit of technical analysis and fundamental analysis. How's the economy doing? What industries
so clarify,
do you believe in?
Fundamental and technical analysis for those that don't know?
Yeah, technical is really a matter of looking at the charts. So using various analytical tools to be able to determine patterns and determine trends in the price of that investment.
Right. So it's price related, right? It's related to the stock itself, not necessarily the company's performance.
That's right. So fundamental is more around the greater economy performance, more related to that company's performance. And so I think using a combination of those tools are smart. And also, you should not ignore your gut feeling. Really, when it comes to investing, you should consider your age and your time horizon. Are you looking to make a quick buck in that day? Or are you looking to make longer term gains, over the course of your life? And so you have to consider all of those things when making a decision. I don't think it's smart to focus on just one.
Yeah, well, let's hope I'm not 65 years old going to Mohegan with $2,000 at the blackjack table. Let's hope that's a 20s and done kind of thing. But I know what you mean. And Burke, we kind of look at our bets the same way, right? We're basing it on technicals and fundamentals. So it's A, technicals. What does the line look like? Do we like the value in the line? And then B, the fundamentals of the team. Who is the team that we're betting on? Have they played well last week? Who's the opponent? Where is it? Stuff like that. But then also we're saying, well, maybe the line's just wrong, right? So what do you value, Burke, when you make your pick? Do you look at the value in the line, or are you looking at like how the team performed last week?
I take in a couple of different factors, but one of the exercises that we did early on a couple episodes ago was predicting lines before we actually looked at them. And if we feel that a line is one way and Vegas has them another way, and it's in our favor, I would trust in my gut instinct and go with what I feel should be the correct line, even though Vegas has all the experts and they put these lines together for a living. But you take in outside factors, try to gather as much information as you can, but always relying on your gut, because you could take all the information in the world, in my opinion, and overthink the situation from all angles, that you're going against yourself multiple times, when really, I really go off my gut first. And then if the information that's presented me makes me change it, then so be it. But I'm a big gut instinct guy, and I feel like outside sources play a lot into my decision making as well. But really, I like to keep it internal, because I feel like I know what should happen, even though my locks don't always become correct.
Oh, people are fading you. They're making a killing right now.
I'll never stop trusting my gut until I die, and that's the way I'm going to go out.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, and that's two good points you bring up. Number one, trust your gut, and do things that you think are right in the moment, because you're going to kick yourself forever if it's game day and you think a team's going to cover the 2-point spread and they win by 30, and you're kicking yourself. That's almost a loss, because you didn't place the bet, and now you're almost rooting against it in a way. And it's the same thing with investing. And this podcast couldn't have come at a better time to bring Smertz on here, for me anyway. I don't know about for him, but I've been a big crypto enthusiast for years now. And me and Smertz have had these back and forths, debating, is it really worth anything? Is it just fake internet money? Or is this a real, investment of our lifetime? And I've been on that end, and I've owned, full disclosure, I've owned, Bitcoin and Ether and a handful of other of those junk coins on and off for years. Never sold any Bitcoin, never sold any Ether, other than early in the Bovada days, about, 7-8 years ago. I was paying in Bitcoin to bet, Nick Chubb first touchdown on Saturday afternoon or something. And in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have been doing that, because that $20 in Bitcoin is probably worth a lot more than whatever that Nick Chubb first touchdown didn't pay me out anyway, because it lost. But I've been buying that up for years. keep buying it. And I've been trying to convince Josh of it. And I just got him on board recently. And luckily today, right before our eyes, right before this podcast, as if God himself smiled upon us, Bitcoin has hit a new all-time high, $67,000 per coin. Smertz, you were anti-crypto for a while, but we got you on board.
It is really hard to say anything bad about it when you're seeing those kind of gains. So it left me in a predicament, and I felt it gave me no choice but to invest after seeing the momentum it carried.
Yeah, well, and to me, we want to talk about best case, worst case. Even for us, and I didn't buy it when it was, $100 a coin or anything crazy like that. I wouldn't have a full-time job if I did, but we did get in somewhat early, and now, I speak for all three of us. We're, almost 30. Bert's literally almost 30. We didn't probably have a lot of money 7-8 years ago. So even if we were investing in Bitcoin, it was, $20 was a lot to be forking over to some risky investment. God forbid $100 or something like that. Now we have a little more flexibility in how much we invest, but, worst case, we invest $100 and it goes to zero and we lose $100. Does that really affect our life at all? No, not really. Right. And especially not now. You can make $100 pretty quick. Even back then, we probably spent that 100 on far worse things. Best case, Bitcoin goes up 40,000% in value, and that $100 is now worth $40,000 or something, right? I think that's a pretty good comparison to say, well, does it matter if I lose 100? No, not really. Does it matter if I make 40 grand? Yeah, that matters a lot. And so that's been my kind of investing strategy is, hey, and whatever your unit size is, if you're investing $50 per whatever, just like betting, if you're going to bet $50 per bet, if you're going to bet $10 per bet, or if you're going to bet $1,000 per bet, that's your unit size, and that's what you continue to do. So my unit size, whatever it is, if you're going to invest X amount of dollars, $1,000 a week or something, worst case, you lose that all. Best case, it turns into a couple $100 grand. I'm okay with that. I know Smertz is a little less risk averse, but how do you ration with that to say the difference between going from 1,000 down to like 700 if it crashes 30% versus the difference of going from 1,000 to 10,000 if it 10x is in value? How do you rationalize that? And you care more about the loss than I do, right?
Yeah, I think definitely me and a lot of people out there are risk averse. They are loss averse. There's a value assigned to the loss. People beat themselves up over losses. They don't want to lose. And so while you might be losing $300, there's also a value assigned to carrying that loss with you and knowing that you were wrong about it. So I think you have to look at it a little bit more or outside of just the financial value or the financial loss. But I completely agree. I mean, people need to spend what they can afford and the amount of risk that they're willing to accept. And while I don't necessarily fully understand crypto, while I'm not prepared to put a sizable investment or a sizable part of my portfolio in it, I think it's worth taking a flyer because no one really knows what's going to happen. I know traditional investors are rolling over in their graves about this stuff. I mean, they were taught to invest in things that they understand. And so I know there's a lot of old school investors who won't even touch it for that simple reason. But
Warren Buffett, the one that comes to mind, right? He said
it was
worthless for the past 5 years. And over the course of those 5 years, I've watched it go, 60x through the roof. So there's something kind of comforting in knowing that the richest investor of our lifetime was wrong on something that I was right on. And that's just, it's kind of crazy. And, people can make a lot of money doing this. And that's why I relate it to gambling because, yeah, it's a risk. But, the return, you can make money doing this. And I think that's why we all work our jobs to make money. I think that's, I wouldn't be working for free. I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't be doing what I do every day for free. And so if we can supplement that with fun stuff, we like to invest, we like to talk invest. And like you said, you totally don't have to understand it. And I don't fully understand it. I probably understand it more because I've been around it longer, but I follow to and listen to enough people that do understand it, that I'm comfortable in their assumptions. I'm comfortable in their input. It's the same reason anybody would listen to this podcast, right? If you don't understand gambling, but you trust us, and if we're successful and you follow us, you can ride coattails pretty easily. And it's very easy to do that in investing too. So I guess, my thing would be, we're each going to give out our kind of biggest tip for both gambling and for investing. But my biggest tip is whatever you're going to do it with conviction. There's a difference in gambling for fun and gambling for money, and both are fine and both have their spot. But if you're going to bet $10 on the Thursday night game, it really doesn't matter if you win or lose that game, right? You have $0 or you have $20. It really doesn't matter to your life at all. That's for fun, and that's fine, and that's awesome that a lot of people do that. I think that's a cool market to be in. But if you're going to invest $500 or $5,000 in tomorrow's game, then you have a pretty real stake in the outcome of the game, right? It makes an impact on your savings or your bankroll for future bets. And it's the same with investing. If you're going to put $5,000 into Bitcoin, you can make a lot of money. It could still 5x from there, and you could end up with 25 grand. But of course, you could also lose it. If you're going to put $20 in, $40 in, you could make a lot of money, relatively speaking. It could double to 80 or 100 or $200. But it really doesn't matter if you lose that 40 bucks, right? So how do you justify then putting a small amount into something as volatile as Bitcoin?
Exactly as you said. I mean, you have to weigh the potential return, of course, to the potential loss. But I mean, based off of what we've seen over the last year or two, I mean, history speaks for itself. You look at the exponential growth that has occurred. I mean, even if you had put $100 in, you could be sitting with a sizable return with very little risk. I mean, it's easy to say that now because we're looking back at what happened. But if you believe that history repeats itself and that, Bitcoin or whatever coin you're investing in is here to stay, then I think that's a completely fine bet to make, as long as you're not going for broke. I know there's a lot of people out there that put their entire savings and they have even borrowed on top of it for a chance to strike it rich. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think it's perfectly justifiable based off of the potential return to put in a small amount that you can swallow if it goes downhill.
Yeah, and it's relative for everybody, right? If $50 is a lot to you, then you invest $50. That's difference making. If $50,000 is a lot to you or not a lot to you, then you do it all relatively speaking. But if you only have $100 to your person, I wouldn't spend 50 of it on Bitcoin, right? But if you have a lot more, then you have a little more to invest, or you can all do it relatively speaking. But I think the moral of the story for me is, and anyway, maybe you now at this point too, I think it's almost irresponsible to not own crypto because of the potential. I think if you're investing in anything and you're writing off crypto because either you don't get it or you think it's, for the birds, I think that's irresponsible, especially people of our age, 20 to 40. Worst case, you lose $1,000, you can make it back pretty easily, right? For that potential return. And the community is crazy. Just to give you an idea, and Smirts and I were texting about this last night, one of my favorite Twitter follows in the crypto sphere was bored last night and found some random Twitter follow who he offered him 9 Ether to shave his mustache live on camera. For those of you unfamiliar with the price of Ether, 9 Ether is about $35,000. So obviously this guy, random Tuesday night, went online, shaved his mustache for 10 minutes, made $35,000. The crypto community is insane. So definitely be a part of that. So my tip is conviction. Whatever you do it with conviction. Smirts has a tip for you also on timing.
Yeah, it's about timing. Just don't do it, kids. It doesn't pay. History has proven that it doesn't. Don't try to time the market.
There you go.
It's a losing game. Dogs on Wall Street, sophisticated day traders that are sitting in their basement with 100 computer screens and a supercomputer running through real-time data, and who can make trades quicker than you could imagine. And so really what it comes down to is you have to just take the gains as much as you can. And it doesn't matter if you catch the bottom, because you risk missing out on the entire bull market, like I did when COVID first hit. I mean, the market is so complicated. There's so many forces. You can't possibly understand all of it and make a reasonable prediction. And so, when COVID first hit, you look at the market, it tanked very briefly, but then over the period of a year, it doubled. And I was one of those who sat out thinking that they were smarter than everyone else. that COVID's here, guys. What are you doing? The market, of course, is going to tank. And that's working off of limited information like most people are. And so I ended up missing about 50% of that bull run. You know, had I not tried to time it, I'd be sitting with a lot more money right now.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, that was kind of an obvious bottom. You know what I mean? March 2020 was the time where you should have taken all your savings and invested as much as you can, because it wasn't going to go any lower than that. But I certainly wouldn't have sold there. You know, if you don't want to buy there, that's fine, but I would certainly hold, you know, as long as you can, and make sure that you're not selling at losses, because time over time, it's going to come back. So I think not timing the market is very important. Buy and hold, and basically cash out whenever it makes a difference to you. You know what I mean? I don't know how high Bitcoin's going to go. You know, it could go to $1 million. It could go to $10 million. It could stay where it is right now. I don't know. But when it gets to a point where, you know, I'm comfortable cashing out and it makes a difference, you can pay something off. You can pay off a debt. You can, you know, buy a car or something. At that point, you cash out. And if it goes higher, you're okay with that, even though you missed out on some gains because you made a difference in your life. And that's what we invest for, right? We're not investing just to hold this coin forever and do nothing with it. You could have $1 billion, but if you do nothing with it, your life stays the same. So if you get to a point where you can pay off your car loan, pay off your house, pay off your student loan, whatever, cash out. And now you've instantly made an impact on your life. You know what I mean? And I think that's important too. So the timing should be user specific. It should not be market specific. You should be buying and selling these things when you think they value you the most. And it's funny that Smertz is, you know, a conservative investor with not wanting to go to a lot of these risks. But he's the first guy I know that places a 10-team money line parlay Sunday into Monday into next Thursday of next week. So that's an interesting juxtaposition.
You know, I think it's all about balance. And it's all about fun too. I mean, what is not fun about placing a 10-team parlay?
Well, right. So that's a for fun bet, right? Yeah.
That's like 100% for fun. Letting off steam.
And gambling for money and for fun outlined right in front of you. He's willing to place this 20-to-1 absurd parlay for $20. But when it comes to the bigger bucks, he's a little safer. He doesn't want to lose it all. I get both of the ends of that. And as long as you know what you're doing in the moment, that's what it's for. So interestingly enough, talking about money line favorites and parlays and lines, why don't we get into the Thursday night game real quick? And then we're going to go into our locks for the week. And we're going to give Smertz a guest pick too. And if he gets it wrong, he's never welcome back. And if he gets it right, we're going to keep the mojo rolling next week. So,
there's that risk reward we've been talking about.
There's the risk reward. So he better think on that. Yeah. Let's start with the Thursday night game. We have the Broncos at the Browns. So it's in Cleveland. This line started, I don't know if any of you saw it, but the look-ahead line before these games Sunday was -6. Browns -6. Now Baker's out. Now Hunt and Chubb are out. It's -1.5 for the Browns at home. The total sits at 41.5. It was 42.5, so it went down a full point. I see no reason to not lay the 1.5 on the Browns here at home. I'm taking them as the favorite. I'm putting 2 units on this play. I think it's a very confident play for me. Baker versus Case Keenum doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me. So I like the Brownies here at home to cover the 1.5. Dearness Johnston is playing running back for them. He's good. Like, he's not obviously Nick Chubb, but he played last year for a game or two, and he's pretty good. So I see them covering the 1.5 at home. Burke, what's your thought quick?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the with Baker not being trusted, he's not playing, so they're going to rely heavy on the run, I believe. 58.5 rush yards for Johnson seems like a great play here. I'm not too sold on the lines. I just don't trust the Browns enough at this point in time. But playing the player prop here seems like the right move.
Smertz, you got a feel on the line. Browns 1.5, total 41.5.
Well, they just did not look good last week. They are a run-heavy team. They have 2 star running backs. And, you know, they're both out. How could you trust them after what we saw last week and with both of them being out? I can't ride them this week.
So Smertz stays away. All right. Burke stays away from the line as well. I'm putting 2 units on the Browns -1.5. I can guarantee it. It's happening tomorrow night in Cleveland. We're going to see Browns 21, Broncos, let's say 17. They cover the 1.5. Dearness Johnson goes over 58.5 rush yards. We move on to Sunday. We're already up 2 units. So Sunday is interesting because a lot of teams are on bye. We actually have 3 lines that are over 14 points this week, which is crazy. Just as we said, again, they're adjusting these lines way up to knock them out of teasers for people so that people can't tease these picks down. The good teams are getting jacked up. The bad teams are getting jacked down. So this was a tough slate for me. But let's go over our locks. So I'm 7-2 on the year. Burke is on the board. It was the late pick on Sunday, so he actually was 0-8 for a couple hours, and then nailed the over in the Browns-Cards game. So I'm 7-2. Burke is 1-8. If you've been riding me and fading Burke, you're 15-3. That's a pretty good slate. Let's keep it going this week. Let's get Burke turned around. My first lock is the Falcons -2.5. I believe that one's in Miami. So they're at Miami laying 2.5. This opened as a pick'em. So if you got it as a pick'em, that's good value on the Falcons. I just think they're better. I don't think the Dolphins are very good. The Falcons are coming off a bye, which they chose to have after their London game. The Dolphins did not choose to have a bye after their London game. So they're coming back from London and now playing a home game against the Falcons, who are well rested. The weapons are better. Ridley is back. Pitts has had one of the highest target shares in the league, and last week he finally converted on a couple of them. I think he's big games from here on out. Ridley is here to stay. Even that backfield is good. I love the Falcons laying less than a field goal against the Dolphins. If they get Deshaun Watson, this pick might change, though I don't think he was eligible to play this week anyway, and he might be suspended. So I'm going Falcons 2.5.
Yeah, I'm staying away from this game. The Dolphins broke my heart in London in the morning session on Sunday, so I can't trust them. Falcons, I still do not trust. I have no idea what they're going to be about. But 2 teams that I have really enjoyed, and I feel like their offenses are clicking at the right time mid-season. The Bengals and the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, obviously, we discussed a lot about him earlier in the episode, being a perennial and a great value MVP pick, the way he's running that offense basically by himself. Sure, he's getting help from Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews at tight end, putting up points all over the place. But I really like
a wideout on the Ravens that I can spend 40% of my fab budget on. Rashad Bateman, who nobody else bid on. Okay.
Yeah,
our commissioner spent 40% of his budget on Rashad Bateman this week for no apparent reason, and nobody else even bid on him. So I just wanted to get that little jab in there.
Yeah, he deserves everything he gets for just not having a taste of the temperature in the room. Anyway, going back to what I was stating, I love the Ravens offense, the way they're clicking right now with Lamar running the show. But I really, really like what the Bengals are doing with their young core receivers and Joe Burrow. They've been able to put points up on the board. They had a great showing last week at Detroit, put up 34 on the road. I think this has a potential to go into the low to mid 50s. And with the line getting at 47, I think it's good value. So to get lock number 2 on the season, I'm going with Bengals Ravens over 47.
All right, I like it. And you get a push on the 47 as well, so that's a good, nice number for you. The only problem I have with that is if the Ravens figure out their pressure, which they've been doing, and kind of stuff Burrow before those routes can develop, maybe lean the Ravens team over because I do like them in that game, but 47 is a nice number to get that one at. It does feel a smidge low. It feels like it should be 48, 48 and a half, somewhere in there. My second lock of the week is the Giants catching 3 points at home against the Panthers. So no McCaffrey still, if I'm correct. Sam Darnold has not looked as good as he has in the beginning part of the season against bad teams. And the Giants catching a field goal, this actually opened, I think, at 2. And now, so we're getting it up to 3. It's -115 Diggs. So you're paying a little bit for it. But I just like them catching 3 at home. Dimes should be back. The backfield has looked fine, whether it's Saquon or whether it's Booker. I think that's good enough. Sterling Shepard, should have a significant target share this week, especially with Tony out. And it's a low total game. The total's 43. So not to foreshadow my next pick, but in these low total games, I like taking the dog because I think worst case, the Giants lose by a field goal. Maybe they lose by 2. I think catching 3 here is good value because I think they can win the game outright.
Yeah, I looked at this game in depth too. Again, the Carolina Panthers broke my heart last weekend, coming all the way back and then blowing that game in overtime. I thought I had a shot to get to at least winning record on Sunday, but came up short. So I'm staying away from that game. But I'm going to go with the team that I brought to the dance ever since I was a kid, and the Green Bay Packers. I rarely bet on the Packers, but the way they've been playing the last 5 weeks after that Week 1 debacle against the Saints, Rodgers has been clicking with the offense. The defense has been performing a lot better. They've been holding teams down. I'm just not scared of the Washington football team. And I know the Pack got them at home. The line's been doing fairly well, giving Rodgers time to throw to Devontae Adams. Got to start getting some other wide receivers, but I think this could be a 10 to 14 point win for the Pack, the way they looked against Chicago last week.
All right, so Burke's rolling with the home dogs, the Pack. Not literally home dogs, they're home faves, but his home dogs, the Pack. I don't know about that line. It's actually -7.5 now that I see it on FanDuel. It opened at 9.5, so a lot of action on the Washington football team so far. Scary pick for me, but I'll root for you for the mojo to keep it alive. My third pick might go against the grain from some people here. The Bears are at Tampa this week, playing that high-fired offense. The game total is 47, and I'm taking the Bears catching 13 points on the road at -115. The Bears beat the Bucs last year in that Thursday night game, the famous 4-down Brady game. The Bears' defense has been good. They went under their total last week against the Packers, and I know the whole Rodgers, I own you thing is taking the media circus by storm. But the Bears competed in a lot of that game. It was tight. They covered on teases like I thought they would. I think they're going to cover this 13 pretty easily. I think it's a one-score game between them and Tampa. And again, with a total of 47, if you like that game under, you're kind of on the Bears de facto, because if the game goes under 47, you're most likely hitting that +13 unless it's a 31-0 shutout or something crazy like that. So I like the Bears catching almost 2 touchdowns on the road.
Yeah, again, I'm just not sold on the Bears. I quite frankly do not like the Bears at all. That's complete bias on my end. But I'm looking at the loser of last week's Sunday night game, Seattle Seahawks. They come back home. They played tough against Pittsburgh on the road. I think Pittsburgh's probably a better team than the Saints. I'm still not sold on the Saints. And Seahawks getting 5.5 at home under the lights. I'm going to go with the home dog here to cover 5.5.
All right, so Burke's taking the +5.5. I don't know about that one. I think the total is right on at 43. So again, low total. Maybe you like the +5.5. I think that one could go either way. Maybe it's a tease candidate for the Saints down to +0.5 or something. But all right, Burke's taking the home dog and Geno Smith. He's putting his hands in Geno Smith. I like it. Smirts is taking another dog, a little bit bigger of a dog this week. Where are you headed?
It does make me nervous betting on bad teams like the Texans, but 17.5 is really speaking to me.
It's crazy.
That is a large number. I believe in the Texans. I believe people are overvaluing the Cards coming out of the gate 6-0. I believe they're undervaluing the Texans. I think there's a lot of value here. I think if Tyrod Taylor comes back, which there's a chance, I think that line will go way down. So I think there's value in grabbing that early. And then to throw a stat in here, something I saw was that no team in the past 20 years beyond September has beaten the spread when favored by 17 or more.
Wow, look at that.
Six times.
This guy is digging into the records.
If this was around the horn, I'd give you a couple +1s for that one.
I know it's a controversial pick, so I had to come with an arsenal.
I like it. I mean, 17.5 is a lot. You're getting the hook on the key number of 17. Remember, the hook is when you get a half point on a key number. So they could lose by 17. I don't know that they're necessarily going to win this game outright. I think it's a disaster if the Cardinals lose this game. But I think you're right in the sense that people are overvaluing the Cardinals. 6-0, and I don't buy it. I just don't buy it yet. Another game with a relatively lower total. It's 47.5. It's big to the under. So that could go down to 47, even 46.5 maybe by kick. So grabbing the 17.5 here, I don't hate it. I don't even hate grabbing the +900 money line. I think that's a little crazy. Maybe you put a half unit on it, a quarter unit on it, but I think there's a world in which this happens. Burke hates this pick so much that he just left the screen, but I enjoy this pick at 17.5, something I might entertain as well. So that's Smirts' guest pick. We'll see if he's right and if he can join us again. But let's transition to the NBA because we had our NBA opening night last night. Again, recording this on Wednesday, so we saw the Lakers play the Warriors, and we saw the Nets play the champion Bucks after a tremendous ring ceremony. The Bucks dominated that from start to finish. I'm so mad because I was on the Bucks for weeks. I was pitching my case of the Bucks. They were getting a point or two at one point, and then our friend talked me into the Nets like an hour before tip-off yesterday, and I bet them. and they were not in that game from the start. The Lakers at -3, that was a trap game as well. I was all on the Lakers, and they just rolled over late. They were up 10 or something in the fourth, and they kind of crumbled. I mean, they're old, so we'll see what happens. I wouldn't overreact to opening night. The Lakers, LeBron lost his Lakers debut, AD lost his Lakers debut, and now Russ has also lost his Lakers debut. LeBron doesn't seem to even care. He told Russell to go home and watch a funny movie to take his mind off the game. So I think they'll be okay. Again, it's just one night, but I don't love what I saw from the Nets or the Lakers in opening night. Burke's a Steph Curry truther. I'm understanding of Steph Curry as a great player, but obviously as a LeBron fan, I've been a Steph Curry rival for the past 7 or 8 years. But Burke, he had his first triple-double in 5 years since high school.
Yeah, I mean, not high school, but definitely while he was on that stretch run of world championships. But I mean, I've been a Steph Curry fan since he was at Davidson. I've got his Davidson jersey in my dresser somewhere still. But that guy.
Well, the good part about Steph is that he's small enough to fit right in Kevin Durant's shadow, which he lives in.
That's true, but Steph also won a world championship before Kevin Durant stepped foot.
That was a great team.
Golden States, and he's got his partner in crime coming back soon later this year, and Klay Thompson. Get the Splash Bros back together. I think you're going to see a lot of good stuff. Maybe not as prolific as he was last year when he had to carry the team basically by himself and nearly got them to the playoffs. But Steph Curry is here for the long haul. He's the best shooter that has ever lived. You can quote me on that. He's the best shooter that has ever lived. And I think the Warriors are going to have a long run come April, May, making a run at another world championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steph's clearly the best shooter that we've ever seen in the league. I know, Reggie, and there's been some good ones, but Steph's obviously the best. I would argue Klay's made bigger shots in bigger moments than Steph has, but as far as a pure shooter and somebody who's lethal from any range, Steph is by far the best. I don't love that Warriors team this year. I might be in the minority. I know a lot of people talking them up. We'll see how they finish. It's a long season ahead, obviously, and getting Klay back will help. Let's see if they can make it that far. But the West is a little more open than people are willing to admit this year. I think the East is a little tougher than people are willing to admit. So they could have a slot to get in that 5 or 6 seed. Beat out Denver and Portland maybe and see what happens there. Moving over to the East, though, the story of the East has been the Ben Simmons saga this week. I'm a big Ben Simmons fan. I think he is vastly underrated as a player. He's a top 15 or 20 player in the league. Has not gotten that justification from Philly fans who are out of their minds specifically. This is kind of insane what's going on here. For those of you that don't know, he is held out basically all offseason. He didn't want to report to camp. He showed up, played with a cell phone in his pocket, and then got kicked out of practice yesterday because Doc Rivers asked him to join a defensive drill. He said no. Doc asked him again. He said no again, and Doc said, "You can go home." So it's kind of wild, but I will caution everybody that this is not the first time a star has thrown a tantrum and gotten what they wanted and then been fine elsewhere. Jimmy Butler did this, where he threw a nationally televised temper tantrum at a team practice a couple years ago for the Wolves. And now he is a model citizen in Miami on all accounts and made it to the finals. James Harden as well. Not that I'm justifying any of this, but it happens. People move on. What do we think? Do we think Ben Simmons is getting moved?
I think it's only a matter of time, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about him for CJ McCollum.
Yeah, well, that's been floating out there. I think that's gone at this point.
I'm not sure, but I know CJ, being from the East Coast, Ohio, and going to Lehigh, obviously.
Yeah,
shout out,
you guys used
to shout out Hawks. I believe it's a matter of time. I know Dame's getting a little restless out in Portland. Maybe need a new partner in crime out there, but you never know what could happen. But if I were to put money on Ben Simmons getting moved before the end of the season, probably before the All-Star break, I would put money on that right now if I could take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get moved in the next week or two. I think it has to happen. He can't play for Philadelphia again, and it's the rare case of the player playing chicken and the organization just not backing down. I think Daryl Morey is one of the best at his job in the league, and he's just not willing to back down and not willing to get less than what he deserves for Ben Simmons. And
Doc Rivers is too old to put up with that crap. And obviously,
Doc's a Hall of Fame coach.
And then dealing with those fans are another animal too. So you think he's going to get a welcome parade from the fans on
No.
Philly? Absolutely not. I think it's the longer he stays in Philly, the bigger the recipe for disaster.
Yeah, he can't stay there. He can't play there. And then, honestly, I think there might be some mental health issues that are the cause of this. I think Ben, that it's a serious thing, of course. I think he might need some help in that manner, and hopefully he gets it if he needs it. And I think for him to go back to play in Philly would not be best for him, nor the team, nor really anybody. So one of the trades that has been floated around out there too is a Sacramento Kings trade that would involve some variation of Bagley, Hield, Halliburton, and/or picks. Apparently the Kings do not like their own players anymore because they told Bagley he can't play for them for no apparent reason. For some reason, they don't like Buddy Hield, who I am still on record as I would have rather had him on the Lakers than Russell Westbrook. I think he's a better fit there. He's definitely a better shooter. He's a better player with LeBron there. So I don't know why they don't like those two guys, but if you can get some sort of Bagley, Hield, and picks package for Simmons, I don't know that I would throw Halliburton in there because him and Fox are a pretty good backcourt. But if you can get that, I'd probably do that both ways.
Yeah, Halliburton, we were high on him last year coming out of Iowa State. He is a player. If somehow the Sixers can sneak him into a deal and move Simmons, get Halliburton, a young budding superstar to play alongside Embiid, that's Philly be making out like bandits, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and I think something has to be done. Really, Sixers haven't had a lot of playoff success. They haven't really underperformed until last year, but they definitely haven't overperformed. So I think they need to make a splash. The last time they really had a splash was, when they lost to the Raptors up in your neck of the woods there, Smirts. I remember that night we were texting that Kawhi shot. I think it's still bouncing on the rim around there. But what do you think about your Raptors this season, Smirts? You've been following them at all?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. I mean, I was pretty disappointed in the time following Kawhi's exit. I'm still a little upset he left. I think they could have done great things together. That team has unwound a bit since he left. So I'm really not too high on them for the foreseeable future. I think they need another star. Especially with
they lost Lowry too, right? So
they lost Lowry too.
Full rebuild mode.
He's in Miami now, correct?
He's in Miami, yeah. So yeah, and I mean the Raptors. What the hell are they doing at that 4 pick, passing on Suggs? They let Suggs fall to 5.
We love Suggs.
That's gonna be the miss of the century, I think, for them.
We love Suggs. I think he's with. I think Orlando picked him up at pick 5.
Orlando picked him at 5. Yeah,
and
so they got a great deal.
He is a great centerpiece to build an organization around. I think he's going to be a great fit in Orlando. They're going to be able to get guys to play for him. He's a true facilitator, makes the teams better. I mean, look what he did for Gonzaga as a freshman last year. I mean, they were good, but he put them at an elite offensive efficiency level throughout the entire year. Credit they fell apart in the national championship, but I know me and you, we had big stake on them in that Final Four game against UCLA, which was probably one of the better moments of our gambling careers. That night, I will remember that forever.
We had them on all sorts of money to finish money line parlays. We had them to cover these things. We had a couple boosts. The embrace that you and I had in my living room after that was more of an embrace of relief than anything else, that we feel like we just went on a roller coaster for 2 hours. And I remember I had just got the COVID vaccine shot the second round, so I was not sure where I was exactly. My head was a little, but I remember that night, we were very happy with that Suggs outcome, very relieved that we didn't lose a lot of money and in fact won a lot of money.
Yeah, but look out for the Magic in the next couple of years.
Yeah, look out for the Magic, and that's one of my picks this week, honestly. And half these games are going on right now. You guys aren't going to hear this till Thursday, so my picks, I promise you I'm not cheating, but my picks for this week on opening nights, I like the Celtics against the Knicks. They're underdogs. I would catch the Celtics on the money line. The Wizards +3 against Smirts' Raptors. The Raptors without Siakam, I think +3 is a great value, assuming Beal's playing. I know him and Rui were questionable. So assuming they're in, I like the Wizards, the Celtics. The Wolves -5.5 over the Rockets is another pick for me. I'm a little higher on the Wolves and the Rockets. I'm high on Jalen Green. I think he's going to score in bunches this year. Maybe look for point props on him, but the Rockets just aren't very good. And then I'm going to take the Sixers -4. I know there's a lot of drama going on over there, But I think they're a lot better team than the Pelicans. They still have Embiid. They still have good shooters around him. They have the better Curry brother. So I think the Sixers -4 over the Pelicans is I was hoping somebody caught that. I think the Sixers -4 over the Pelicans is the play. So Sixers, Wolves, Wizards, and Celtics all against the spread. Those are my 4 picks for the week. Real quick, college football. Burke had a hell of a hot streak last week. He kept it going this week. Looks like he's 4-2. So 15-3 over the last 3 weeks in general. What are your picks for this week?
Yeah, so we're going to look to keep the momentum, and this time I'm going to be able to post my picks prior to the 12 p.m. start on Saturday. I got stuck at a cross-country meet and could not access the Twitter account to post my picks, but credit, I am don't want to toot my own horn, but we're running.
I'm going to start giving out my picks after these games end.
Yeah, but I'll show you the FanDuel backup. So they actually happen. But I am looking this week a little bit of a down slate compared to what we're going to be seeing next week with 2 potential top 10 matchups in the Big Ten. But this week I'm leaning the underdogs a little bit. Pick number 1, the Purdue Boilermakers, coming off a monster road win against number 2 Iowa, basically calling them out for the frauds they are. Looked very good on the road. They return home against a struggling Wisconsin team, and Purdue is getting 2.5 points here. So I like the home dog here to cover. Not sure about the money line yet, but definitely plus 2.5 is a great value for them. Oklahoma State, undefeated top 15 team in the country, going on the road. They just came after a monster win against Texas. I don't see them letting down yet. Iowa State has vastly underperformed, and Oklahoma State is getting 6.5 points here. I like Oklahoma State to cover, most likely to win the game too. So if you're looking for a big money line straight up prop, look for Oklahoma State to beat Iowa State on the road this coming weekend. And then what could have been a monstrous matchup in the Pac-12, but both teams have kind of cooled off a little bit since, but still plenty of Pac-12 championship implications. You got the Oregon Ducks getting 1.5 points at UCLA. I know a lot of people, including myself, were riding UCLA, but they kind of stumbled a little bit after that hot start. Obviously, beating LSU doesn't look as good as it does now when they beat them early in the season. But the Oregon Ducks, they have the better athletes. They got the consensus number 1 pick coming up in the draft, and Kayvon Thibodeau at defensive end. They are getting 1.5 on the road. I like Oregon to win straight up on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. I believe it's a 3:30 game. So I'm going to be riding the underdogs this Saturday. Purdue plus 2.5, Oklahoma State plus 6.5, and Oregon plus 1.5. And look to continue this hot streak.
All right. So Burke likes some dogs. We'll try to post those up on the Twitter so everybody who's interested can play his dogs on Saturday. I like them. I like the picks. Especially ranked teams catching some points feels like some good value. So we'll finish out today, as we do always, giving you at least one strong betting tip that you can apply to most situations. And the strategy that we're going to use this week is talking about betting early versus betting late. So kind of like we were talking about with our little investing cameo there's a difference between finding value and finding information. So I think I might be on the other end of this from Burke, and Smirts will see where you sit on the fence here. But if you bet early in the week, so let's say, for NFL, if you're betting week 6 at the end of week 5, that Sunday or Monday after you've seen the games right away, you're going to get a different line than if you wait to Friday or Saturday. And remember, we do this podcast usually on Wednesdays or Tuesdays. So we're taking these picks early. So we're missing out on information.
Yeah, there's been a couple of locks I have made on the podcast that the lines have changed by 2-3 points by the time they kick off.
And that happens. And so you might say, well, Ken, why would you ever bet early then if you can gather your information and you can bet later in the week? Well, the answer is value, right? So why, if you find a line that's wrong on Sunday, it's going to correct itself by Wednesday, by Thursday, definitely by Friday and Saturday. But if you see it on Sunday and you identify it and you say, there's some value there, this line's going up or this line's going down, you take it. And now you have a better line than those people who waited for the information. And you're saying, well, what if somebody gets hurt? Well, somebody could get hurt any day. If you take a line on Monday, somebody could get hurt on Tuesday. If you take a line Friday, somebody could get hurt Saturday. What about injury news that's already happened? Well, yeah, you could wait for that. Or you could take a gamble and say, well, I like this Browns line And if Baker plays, it's going to go up. So I might as well take it now because I like it either way. So there's value in betting early, and there's information that you gather by betting late. It's why I think we draft too late in our fantasy league, because I think drafting earlier in fantasy football allows people, smarter people, to succeed more, and it takes a little bit of that randomness out of fantasy football. Like guys like CeeDee Lamb were going in like the 6th round back in like July drafts. And by the time September rolls around, he's going, 25th to 30th overall, because people understand, oh, he's a good player. So if you drafted in July and you're smart, you get CeeDee Lamb in the 5th or the 6th, that helps the better fantasy players, and it takes some of the randomness out of it. Now, somebody could get hurt, but as somebody on this podcast knows, you could lose your starting running back even if you draft 3 days before the season started. Smirts drafted Gus Edwards in the 3rd or 4th round. He got hurt like a day later. He's out for the season. So that could happen anytime. So I like the value of betting and drafting early. Burke, I think you're a little bit on the other end.
Yeah, I like to wait as close to game time as possible. There's a lot of experts that know a lot more about trends and analytics than I do. And I do take their value into consideration. But I trust my gut, but I like to wait till the last possible moment to basically eliminate the chance of injury. Sure, if it happens in a game, you can't really control it. But going up to game time, weather plays a factor in games sometimes, especially football games. Like we see kickers missing extra points, field goals all the time. Could throw the over/under off, but I like to listen to what people are saying, wrap it around what the initial opinions I have, and then basically 10, 15 minutes before game time, you're not going to see much movement on the line at that point. I really like to gather all the information I can get and then make the best educated decision possible. And if it rarely does it change my gut, but it makes me feel more confident about my pick after listening to a lot of people speak about why something will or won't happen, and being able to put my money towards what I believe will happen with all the information that I do have.
All right. Smirts, what about you? Value better or information better?
As a risk-averse person, I have to go with the information. I agree with Burke that, there's a lot of information that comes out midweek. Like weather's a huge factor. It doesn't even have to be around injuries. And there's a lot of analysis and reports that come out in the meantime too. And yes, the line might not move in your favor, but personally, I'm willing to sacrifice that line movement for better information. And it might be enough to hold me out of that line entirely, to convince me that that's not the right way to go. So that's how I feel most comfortable.
And again, even if you're not confident going into game time, you could always get a feel by how the game starts to progress and go on the live bet route if that's the route you choose. Sometimes you just can't get a feel on a game, and it's better to see how the teams are going to actually start and play before putting your money on one side or the other.
Yeah, you could, and I don't mind. I don't do a lot of live betting anymore. I think the value's kind of sucked out of that, but I can see the rationale behind wanting to see these teams, or even the halftime lines, right? Maybe betting it at half and seeing if you can get a feel for the second half. I just like grabbing these lines early that I think are wrong. 2 good examples this week is the Falcons opened as a pick 'em, and now they're -2.5 against the Dolphins. And the Chiefs actually opened at 2.5 over the Titans. They went up to 5.5, so that adjusted a full field goal. So you're going to see these things correct themselves. And if you can, I like to jump in on those early. You are taking a risk, but just as we talked about before, higher risk, higher reward potentially. And if you want to wait for that information, you can still get the same payout, just maybe at a different line. So appreciate everybody's insight on that. Hopefully you guys can apply that moving forward. Smirts, pleasure having you. Hopefully your Texans pick hits so we can have you on again sometime. We'll try to do some more of this, branching off of gambling and relating it to some other things. Until then, Ken Doolittle, Mike Burke, Josh Smirts signing off. We'll make some money.
Let's win some money, baby.